All set? Great. Hey everybody, my name is Arianna Willett. I am a security program manager over at Twilio, which is out in San Francisco. This is my second time in Ohio. I'm visiting a friend's family. When I told them I was talking at a conference, I think they had this big idea of me in a suit, talking to all these fancy people. And then I told them I was speaking at the grog shop, and they did an excellent job not laughing at me. You know, I mean, this is pretty fancy. My sneakers are tied and everything. So I'm here to talk today about quantifying security's value, why we should do it, and how to do it. So the why is pretty easy. We need to be able to tell folks within our organizations why we need money and headcount. And that's really what it comes down to. In order to do our jobs, we need to justify the cost of security. And as I'm sure you all are very aware, security is very expensive. And so we need to do a lot of justification. The issue is that a lot of our justification goes something like this. We have X number of unpatched Windows machines in our environment. And to all of us, that's like, whoa, unpatched Windows machines. Or hundreds of gigabytes of DDoS attacks. That sounds terrible, right? To a security executive, yes, that's terrible. To a business executive, that means almost nothing. And what they're faced with is then comparing apples and oranges. And I hope you all are appreciating my free internet art. But the apples and oranges, they have groups like BizDev saying, if you give us $500,000 and 3 people this year, we can guarantee you that we can decrease cost of goods sold by X%. And you have finance, who is miraculously able to come up with return on investment information for the 5-year plan, things that haven't even been scoped out. And here security is not able to give any dollar amounts. So this is what they're left with, is this jumble of things that don't make sense. And this is because as security professionals, we're not speaking in the language of the business, which is money. The great news is we can do this. We just need to learn how. The bad news is that for some reason, security professionals have this idea that security is a special snowflake that cannot be quantified in dollars. In fact, as I was prepping for this talk last week, Harvard Business Review, which I usually think has, pretty good articles, had an article on this very topic on why executives underfund security. And this is a direct quote from that article. The great news is that this is not true. We can quantify security in dollars. We should quantify security in dollars. And we're going to talk about it today. Okay, so a little bit of math. Only addition and subtraction, so keeping it simple. Here's the ROI equation we're going to talk through today. The impact of an event, how much it costs if something happens, minus the cost of controls that you can put in place to either prevent, detect, respond to that event, any revenue enabled by those security controls. You add and subtract those all together, you end up with the return on investment for any security type of investment. And we'll walk through these one by one. So the first one is event impact. Again, how much will it cost if that impact occurs? This number is composed of 3 separate numbers. 2 of them are just about time spent. How much time does a security team spend responding to this event? We'll use data breach as an example. If a data breach occurs, how many hours does your IR team spend? How many hours does your monitoring team spend? How many hours does your compliance team spend? How many hours does all of your other security teams spend responding to and mitigating the results of that data breach? You add other teams. How much time do other teams spend? PR, marketing, legal. All of those teams are going to spend time responding to that data breach, and that time is worth money. The third thing, operational expenses. What other dollar amounts are involved in a data breach. You have fines, legal fines, regulatory fines. You're going to have auditors. You're going to need to increase your security to make your investors happy if you're a public company, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. I think one of the immediate things you all thought of is, well, how do I quantify all that? Take your best guess. You're security professionals. You do this for a living. You probably have a good idea already of how much it would cost if something happened. And you can put these numbers in a range. You can say, well, at minimum, I think we would spend 100 hours responding to a data breach. 100 hours times average dollar per hour, that's a dollar amount. On the maximum, the most amount of time we could spend if all hell broke loose and the sky fell and pigs were flying, here's how much money we think we would spend. Here's how much time we think we would spend. And get that range together. So we did an activity like this at Twilio, the company that I work for, and I changed the numbers, so you're welcome. But basically, it's a very simple thing, right? You have your range of hours. So this is hours times average. I'm mind blanking now that I'm up here with a microphone.
Salary.
Thank you. Average salary divided by the hours. You have your operational expenses, lower and upper, and that gives you a range, right? This is a giant range. So we're saying here, and again, these are fake numbers, but we're saying here that anywhere between $200,000 and $50 million. That's gigantic, right? But that's better information than we just had 5 seconds ago. And data breaches, we didn't do any work to define that any lower. So data breaches, you can lose 5 records or you can lose 5 million records. So there's a large range within what we were trying to measure, and you see that large range in the dollar amounts that we came up with. Okay, so this right here is the very, very, very simple scenario analysis. If you would like to get more sophisticated, these are 2 books that I would highly recommend. They will literally teach you how to measure. This one is called How to Measure Everything, but they will literally teach you how to measure all things, and both of them are geared towards security professionals. Okay, so our second number that we're going to work with in our ROI equation is cost of controls. So if we're continuing with our data breach scenario, right? Cost of controls is the thing that you're trying to justify, the investment you're trying to say, this is what's worth spending money on. It's the controls that you're going to put in place to stop, find, or respond to a data breach. And again, made up of the same 3 core items: security team time, other team time, operational expenses. The third one is revenue enabled. This is my favorite one because it requires the least work. Other teams are going to give you this information because they already track it. It's made up of 2 pieces: revenue gain and revenue protected. Revenue gain. Are you going to have additional sales based on your security work? Revenue protected. Are you protecting any revenue? Are you decreasing fraud? Are you protecting intellectual property? These are all quantitative things that you can measure that add to your story for why you should get money and you should get headcount. When I said that other teams all do this, so when I was first doing this at Twilio, I went to the sales team and I said, sales team, I really need this information. How could I possibly convince you that you should start tracking sales that you don't get because of security? And they laughed at me and they pulled up this report and said, we're already tracking this. You already have a category. And not only did they have this category, but when I dug into the other categories, there were security features everywhere in all of our products. And so we took that information, we aggregated it, and said, here's what we're losing because of our security posture. Okay, so those 3 things equal return on investment. Let's dive into some examples. Say you're looking to decrease phishing, you've noticed that this is a problem, you want to throw in an antivirus solution to see if this works. Once again, all of these numbers are completely made up. They're not accurate in the least bit. They're mostly made for easy math. Say your CEO gets phished, you lose $1 million. You lose sales, you lose current customers, you lose intellectual property, your investors are mad, so your stock tanks, etc. You estimate all of that at $1 million. Antivirus solution is only 100K. So simple, ROI. You don't think you're going to make any, you're not enabling any revenue, you're not protecting any revenue. You don't really think this factors into this particular scenario. 900K ROI. Super easy decision. What if you have less information and your scenario is more complicated? You're trying to implement multi-factor authentication, you have a customer-facing website, you've noticed there's a lot of fraud that could be pulled back by the implementation of an extra control, but you don't have specific values, right? You're not really sure if multi-factor authentication is going to be the thing that solves the problem, so you're estimating your impact at $0 to $1 million. 0 because you don't know that this is, you don't have hard evidence that this is really affecting your customers, it's not really affecting things, you're not positive, right? Cost of controls. MFA solution, 125K. Revenue enabled. Well, you know that the fraud team has told you this is a bit of an issue. They've told you it's at least 200K that we're losing per year because of customer account takeovers. So you add this together. You have a range, right? Your ROI is now 75K to $1.1 million. Again, a pretty large range, but that's more information than we had 5 minutes ago. And as you add more empirical data, as you add more evidence to your equations, these ranges will narrow and you can go with a better story. So let's talk about how we gather this information. We've gone through good ways. You can ask one expert, right? You as security professionals already have a lot of information that you just have to quantify. A better way of doing this is to ask several experts. So if we as a group all independently submitted answers on how much a data breach would cost, that information would be better than me myself deciding how much a data breach would cost. There's been studies done, so I don't want you to take my word for it, there's been studies done where if you can ensure that each expert submits answers independently, those answers aggregated are extremely accurate. And so I have this ox here. One of the studies was around a country fair where they had an ox and they had each person that came into the fair, ages range, sexes range, occupation range, guess how much that ox weighed. Hundreds and hundreds of people guessed the ox's weight. Some of them were crazy off, and some of them were crazy under, and some of them were wild and off the charts. But when you averaged all those answers together, they came within 1% of the ox's actual weight. And this study's been replicated several times. So what we do at Twilio is I sit the security team down, and I have them just Slack me the answers to the questions. So that way we can talk about it as a group, but then they submit answers independently, and when we average those together, we think, at least, that we have the most accurate information to move forward on. And that includes how likely is something to happen, how much will it cost, how many hours do we think we'll spend on that thing. The best method is to take kind of an expert model, what we just talked about, and add empirical data to it. This takes a little bit more effort. Good and better are really great places to start, and that will get you a very easy way to quantify your data very quickly. Okay, and a recap. So you can quantify your data. You can submit it in dollars. This is the equation. The information does not have to be exact in order to be useful. And leveraging other people and other groups to get the best information will get you the best information. I already said it. Surprise. Are there any questions that we can talk about? Because I think I ran a little short. Oh.
So, I like what you have for the revenue enabled. Mm-hmm. Do you find it, I mean, it's a great figure, and it's something that's great to use. Do you ever see that it's actually hard to, even though you can quantify it, to have management see what revenue enabled actually brings to the table?
Yeah. So the question was, do you find that it is tough to get management to see the revenue enabled from a security decision? At first, yes, but once because we've started reporting to them the revenue that we're enabling as a security group, they've started to kind of expect that metric from us. And I find that they're overall very interested in it. Everyone is interested in making sales and protecting revenue, etc. So that's been actually a big hit with management. And even on Twilio is a B2B business, so we have a customer trust function that handles questionnaires, it handles sales, pre-sales questions, customer audits, etc. We actually track the revenue that enables for current customers and for new customers. And so we can go and say we're supporting X amount of new revenue and X amount of current revenue for the business, just from security. Any other questions? Yeah.
So after you sell this product technology, what you want to do to the business, they agree with it. And then if we have to cost.
Hold on, I can't.
After you've done this,
okay.
And there's a breach anyway.
Yeah.
How do you maintain the trust with the business that you said I'm going to prevent this, and then there was a cost anyway?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So the question was, if and when there is a breach and you've sold the business based on this method, how do you retain their trust? So that adds a piece that we didn't talk too much about around likelihood. So when we do event impacts, and those two books I showed go through this, when we do event impacts, we often assign not only a dollar value to it, but a likelihood of occurrence. And so if we say, we think that a data breach will be $1 million, but we also think that there's a 20% chance that it occurs, that gives us a little bit more wiggle room when we say, like, this will bring the likelihood down, not to 0, but maybe to 10%, maybe to 5%, whatever we think is necessary. I didn't want to dive into that during this talk because it gets very complicated very quickly. But that's really the next step to this equation. Yeah.
So I face a similar challenge in my position where I have to kind of communicate this to the people in charge of sales, and they have to go and then present that information to customers and prospects. And there's times where it feels like kind of a game of telephone. So I was wondering if you run into that, and if so, how you kind of dealt with it.
So you're asking about customer, like, communicating security things, the value of security, or things that you're doing in security? Both. Okay. And to the sales organization? The sales organization is notoriously difficult because they hear what they'd like to hear. A lot of times what we've done in terms of communicating information about security is we'll give them, and honestly we put it right in Salesforce so it's really easy for them to find, but we give them a repository of information and say, just copy and paste this or email me. And those are the two options there.
So kind of use the names that they're using.
Yes. And in terms of communicating the value to sales management of security, we do what I was just talking about. We actually track all of the interactions that we have with customers, whether that be phone call, whether it be sending out security certifications, jumping in, doing security audits, doing due diligence, and we match that to whatever the deal is worth in Salesforce and say, these are all the deals that we've been involved in, here's the revenue that's supported. And a lot of times security is a blocker, right, to sales in due diligence process. So once we kind of walk them through that, it takes a little bit of time to kind of get them used to the idea. But once you start reporting on those numbers and quantifying what you're doing, it really adds a lot of value to that relationship.
So they've kind of been trained to make sure that information is up to date, or you're kind of like a focus on, right?
So yeah, the question was around keeping information up to date. Within our group, we maintain the repository of information. So we always know that it's up to date and accurate, and then sales uses that information. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for having me here. I appreciate it.